next time. Good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever applies to you, and welcome back to yet another EuroLeague. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Keire and Nymaera to discuss all things roster moves, roster mania 2026, etc. All the rumours as well as the sort of confirmed ones. I know it's not done and dusted, so we will, of course, be doing like a separate dedicated LEC roster video when they're all set in stone. But we're just going to talk about the biggies today from all the major regions and some of the other major talking points. But before we do that, gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's Would You Rather time. Trying to remember where I got the inspiration from for rather this one. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's a pretty simple one. Or is it? Go with it wherever you want, Keire. But what I want to know from you is you're attending either a business meeting or a date. It doesn't really matter. I guess, whichever makes more sense in your head, viscerally, I suppose, at a high-ish end restaurant. Okay, so maybe not like triple Michelin star, you must wear X to come in, but, a relatively highbrow establishment, let's say. Would you rather be comically overdressed for said event? So like full tuxedo, I don't know, top hat, monocle, that kind of vibe, or comically underdressed? So like slippers, wife beater vest, shorts, beach shorts.
Yeah. Rich. Rich, I can't lose here because I feel like so much of my life I've done both. I actually not so much got in trouble, but got advised at work that I can no longer wear a white t-shirt and joggies whilst at work. I'll give you an idea. There's 110 people on the floor. All the women are wearing like dresses or like high heels, black high heels and stuff. All the other men are wearing suits, and I'm wearing joggies and a t-shirt. Now, the fact that I got off with this for like 4 years might just tell you something. You know what I mean? A little bit of the Nassim Taleb anti-fragile. You know what I mean? But I don't give. Appearances do matter, but not when I'm on the phone to somebody, put it that way. I don't know anyone that can see through the phone.
Sure, but you're not on the phone to someone in this scenario, Keire. You are across the table from, an important business person. Okay.
Overdressed. Because here's the thing. I've worn, technically wearing a kilt is, overdressed for, any occasion, right? Okay, it really is, right? It's mental, all the stuff that's involved in it, right? Like the spurn, the skiing do, the shoes, the socks, the jacket, the belt. By the way, the belt's fucking killer, by the way. And the belt's got jewels, amber on it and stuff like that. The cufflings, the shirt's cuffed, the jacket's cuffed, and the cufflings interlink and stuff like that. It's mental. So I don't care what anyone...
interlinked.
By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just a skirt, in case you're unfamiliar. But carry on, Keire, carry on. I've just offended the whole of Scotland. It's gone.
It is just a massive skirt, fundamentally, right? So it is technically overdressed for anything that you're doing. But I could just wear that. I don't even mind wearing it that much. So yeah, I'd be overdressed.
What if the top hat and monocle were mandatory? then what are we saying?
So I can wear the kilt, the top hat, and the monocle. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever seen the double monocles? Rich, where they come together and they click across the top and all that.
That is so steampunk.
So base is what it is, Nymaera.
I think, and the chain actually comes down off my top hat, down like that, and onto my face. Yes, I'm gonna take the overdress.
So, Nymaera, what are you thinking? Most important business meeting of your life? Are you going in?
No, always overdressed. Yeah, no, always overdressed. And if you wear it with confidence, it's such a massive power move that way. And if it was something like a date too, it just makes them feel more special too, that they're worth the effort going towards.
I don't know. See, this is where I disagree, or at least on the date side. On the business side, it's you can view it a bunch of different ways, right? I think most people would just be okay, I respect this. If you if there's someone you've never met before and it's a date and you unironically wear a top hat and a monocle, I think that would probably be more off-putting.
This is the thing though, you're saying overdressed in a very melodramatic way, but if it's really classy overdressed.
Well, no, I said the question, if you will recall, Nymaera, is comically overdressed.
Okay, alright. I know, but that to me, comically overdressed means like just very, very. But I suppose, yeah.
Sure, but what is very, very overdressed? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, a tuxedo is not very, very overdressed. It's just, you know,
I would still say comically overdressed because at least at that point, because either one is going to be quote unquote characterful, right? But I think
Sure.
that the overdressed one shows that you've still been attentive and put the effort in, and it's way more notable in a positive way. I think if you're underdressed, that there's no way that's coming across well, right? I don't think so. As long as you wear the comically overdressed thing with confidence, I can see that coming off as a positive. So I think that was quite an easy slam for me.
I think you guys are crazy, by the way. I mean, for the business one, but I don't know. I'm not sure. Or on the date one, I'm definitely going underdressed. I think it's over if you show up in like comically overdressed. I think it's just over. Whereas if I show up in like, I don't know, like a fucking basketball jersey and shorts or something, I'll be like, you know, sorry, like it just completely.
Whereas if I turn up to a date looking like Elrond from Lord of the Rings, that's going down well. So
in your head canon, mate, I'm not sure what demographic of women this is working on.
My current girlfriend.
There we go.
That's cheating, though. That's cheating.
Very well.
That's cheating.
You
that's
get
cheating.
them. Get them.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to sync up with someone who actually has guaranteed shared interest.
Oh no,
that's cheating.
the person I have a long-term relationship with and a very healthy dynamic. Wow, I might have something to know about what
not allowed.
Referee,
not allowed.
Bar from that guy's bar.
Absolutely. Rejected. Rejected. Denied. No, sorry, that doesn't count.
Oh my god, outside the scope of the question. Fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Simply too based, Nymaera.
Did I mention it was a first date and a blind date? I think doesn't count. Anyway, I'm going underdressed for sure and just saying, you know what? I forgot I came back from the gym after work. I got showered. So, you know, yes, I am clean, but it is just clothes I had in my bag.
Rich, you just used the F word during our date, mate. You've just been torpedoed, mate. That's an instant red flag. I forgot. If you forget the first date or forget something about the first date.
No, I don't forget. I didn't forget the date. I forgot the bag with my smart clothes in. Anyway, obviously I didn't forget the date. I'm there, aren't I?
And inside this bag is Rich's top hat, his monocle.
Exactly. And there you go. It's a talking point for, you know, the third date where I show the bag. I'm like, that's what I was going to wear. And then she's like, maybe you are mentally ill. Anyway, moving swiftly on to all things esports. We're going to start with the region of the LCK champions, and indeed with the champions themselves, because a lot has been going on with our good friends at T1. Starting with Guma 3-peat All-Star AD carry is leaving. I'm gonna say for now by mutual consent, because I guess technically we don't have that much like solid information out there. I think based on what happened during this year, you can probably make your own minds up about what you think maybe did happen, didn't happen. But from my perspective anyway, I actually think if Guma had left at the end of last year, I'd have been quite sad about it, because I think T1 had a chance to do, it's the same way I was sad when Zeus left. I think T1 had the chance to do something like super historic, which would almost certainly never be replicable again. Very special team, etc., etc. But the fact that he's like done a three-peat, it's like, would 4 be amazing? Yeah, sure. But it is at this point diminishing returns. I know that sounds outrageous because obviously it would be a ludicrous achievement, but you get my point. It's like you've cemented yourself. Yeah, you are completely immortalized in everyone's head, right? At this point. So why not, as Keire always encourages members of T1 to do, go pave your own path. Play with different players, see what you can do with other combinations. Like that at this point would increase Guma's greatness more than just staying on T1, I think. So I'm all in favor of this, even though it's, you know, bittersweet, of course. I don't think it's super sad, because I'm also excited to see the incoming Peyz coming to T1. So, Keire, what are your thoughts on Guma leaving? What are your thoughts on Peyz replacing him? And I guess as well, where would you like? I know there are strong rumors about where we think he'll end up, but where would you like to have seen him end up? And what are your thoughts on where he will most likely end up?
So I think it's okay. So Guma leaving. So why I was never like someone who was like so loathsome of like T1 winning is like I was actually like a pretty big Guma, Zeus, owners fans. Like I always enjoyed those like players. Zeus more for me is like earlier days when he was playing like Gwen and like Fiora, rather than later on. But Guma, definitely. I'm a massive Guma fan. Kind of like bittersweet. I think T1 and Guma are like the perfect fit for each other. As in, like, Guma is literally just the ADC that T1 want. As in, he plays pick, he plays prio bot lanes, he pairs up insanely well with the support player to open him up for the map. He's very, very, very good at laning. He provides them very, very sharp angles at draft with Kalista, Draven, Caitlyn. He's S tier late game on specifically Aphelios and Jinx. He has weaknesses around other like champions, but those are quite easily covered. And around the fact of like T1 didn't really like play that much like Kai'Sa. You would think because of their pick nature they would have played more like Kai'Sa, but because Guma's apathy towards that champion and his lack of individual like success with it over the period.
And that is taking into account the fact that yes, he did play it at Worlds, but just historically, right?
Historically, I'm talking about a person's career here. I think it's very, very sad. I actually wouldn't have mind Guma just continuing to play on T1, but the problem is like, and player, I don't think players think like this. I think the only people, maybe some players think like this, but for me, as someone who's a fan of Guma isn't competing against like, Guma's competing against like Uzi, Deft, Viper, Ruler, and because of his role in T1, he is quite considerably far behind them. As in, if you were to take the top 10 best ADC years of any ADC, I don't think Guma would have any of the top 10s, even though he is a top 10 ADC. I don't think he has had an individual year that is a top 10 year. I don't think he would make the cut.
That's taking into account that, like, basically the very best AD carry years of all time have been just incredibly. Yeah. And it's weird because I mean I do think about when was because Guma's first split before that kind of disastrous MSI, like was it Spring 22 was absolutely nuts. For instance, for a while, and then
summer into Worlds, he was like incredible. Actually, he might have not been in Spring. It would have been summer into Worlds because Spring might have still been Teddy.
I can't remember because I seem to remember like his first split before he went to that MSI, he was just ungodly good. Then he had a bit of a meh MSI, and then obviously the rest of the
year. And it was 2021 Worlds. I'll go have a look. He joins for 2021. I'm a year back. Sorry, yeah. You know he is there for. He's on the team with Teddy in Spring, and then it's 2021 summer that he's like incredible at. And then yeah, you're right. At Spring into MSI, the Spring regular season, he's very, very good. Yeah, 22. Yeah, you're right. But the point is like I think Guma Ishii is easily a top 10 ADC of like all time. I did tweet out I think he's the best performing ADC at Worlds like ever. If you just take all the World Championships he's played at.
If you have the envelope of like best year, maybe you put others above him. But if you look at like performance just at Worlds,
he's the best.
Like, no one's at. I don't actually think anyone's close. I mean,
Uzi's pretty incredible, but he's got a bad one in 2018, but he's got he's like 2013 and 2014. I know they're like back in the day, but if they count for Faker, they count for Uzi. By the way, you can't just If Faker has this amount of world championships, Uzi's got second places, by the way, and Uzi was playing with fucking bombs, by the way, like some of the worst, like actual terrible fucking players. He's also playing with like Tabby and Whites, but anyway, So, like, yeah, he's got some, like, big ones, but I would say it's Guma, like, quite easily. I think Ruler's been, like, if you look at all-time greats, Ruler's been dicey, Viper's just not had enough, like, big ones, Uzi's the next one, Deft at Worlds is just a fucking shambles.
Yeah, funnily enough, one of my very first esports matches I ever saw live was the Fnatic EDG quarterfinal series where Deft locked in teleport AD carry Jace. And completely fucking instantly, he teleported like mid-team fight. And this is like the legendary 2015 Deft as well. Like, oh my god, that was a bad Worlds from him.
So the thing is like, okay, I don't think and that's the thing. Guma for me now needs to kind of do the Zeus thing, which I actually think Zeus failed to do this year. In the context of they need to basically have like an individual year where they like trailblaze and they try and put together like an all-time great like year of their own as like an A1 star, A2 star. For me, as I said, Guma easily top 10 ADC of all time, best world's performing ADC of all time, but it doesn't have a year for me that's in the top 10. I thought about it a little bit. Like, Ruler's got 2, Death's got 1, Uzi's got 2, Viper's got 1, Peyz got 2. You know what I mean? Like, and then the next like 2 are like getting really hard. Like, are they Gumas? Like, there's years you could give it to still to Viper. You've got fucking years you could give it to Jackulov. Like, you know what I mean? It's not as clear cut. I don't have them. Like, if someone else does. But the thing is like, Ruler's got like 5 that he's contending for. I think 2 definitely make it, but he's got 5 where he could like easily say like he was. If you're like a massive like Ruler like guy. So that's the big one for me. And then just to move over to Peyz going over, tweeted it out, but I'll talk about it again. I actually think this fit is better than people's memory of Peyz from LCK, because LPL Peyz was a much more lane-focused, aggressive player. I think he's way less clutch than Guma. I think he will not be as good at Worlds as Guma, but I think he will make them more regionally consistent. And Guma was always one of the players that, like, during regular season and playoffs, it was never just like, you were never talking to LCK and being like, oh, Guma may be the MVP. That was never on the cards on anyone's fucking conversation list, by the way, right? Let's not even pretend like it was. Ruler was playing with Chove, and people were like, maybe it's Ruler that's at MVP. Now, I would disagree with that, right? But it was on the cards. Guma hasn't really had that conversation for me, and yeah, I think he's kind of got to go and trailblaze. Peyz was mega in the LPL. I'll let Nymaera pick on this up on a more detail, but I think it's actually going to be a lot better fit than people does, but you are breaking up the Guma Korea thing, and I think that's going to be hard.
Yeah. I think it's also really important too to just like highlight just how many AD carry moves are in the LCK, because we're talking about obviously Guma and Peyz. I think it's actually quite important to mention everything else that's going on, because basically the picture as I understand it is Guma and T1, I think T1's representative released a statement saying that they weren't going to release details about the situation. I'd imagine that's also due to the situation with Zeus last off season 2. Honestly, it's just better to keep this low drama, as long as it was amicable, which I think in that statement it said it was. I saw some badly translated things about how it might have been how Guma didn't want to have the possibility of being subbed because of what happened this year as well. So that was a no-go for him if he was playing with the chance of being substituted. But I have to add in like the asterisk there of I don't know how much solid anything is, and I would imagine there's a bunch of people out there spreading a bunch of stuff just for clout or whatever. But Guma leaving T1, likely going to HLE, that leaves Viper in a weird spot. And Viper, he could go anywhere he wants, honestly, I feel. But apparently he wants to go to a team with Knight on it, which means that he's likely to go towards BLG, because now it seems that after the kind of the fencing match of all the teams overnight, it's likely that Knight stays on BLG, which means that Elk would be out of BLG and he'll be elsewhere in the LPL. We'll get onto that later. But that means Viper will be out of LCK, back to LPL. Peyz coming from LPL to LCK. We've got Docdam leaving KT, not sure where he's going yet. And then, of course, the other person in this conversation too is, well, okay, you're getting rid of Guma. Smash? What's happening with Smash? Because they played with him earlier in this year. Apparently now the rumor is that Smash is going to D plus Keire. So aiming is out of D plus Keire, and Smash is in there as well. So that's what, like 5 AD carry roster moves? Surprisingly, one of them is not Diablo from what we've heard, given how fucking good he was this year. This guy's apparently staying on BFX, given the rumor mill right now, but that guy looks really, really insane. And I have no idea what's happening with the rest of them too, but that's like, I guess I think Docdam and Peter have both been said to be leaving KT. I think that was announced actually as well. So that's the entire bot lane of KT. So that's the whole free-for-all happening here. So we're going to see a very different landscape altogether. So back into the 2 major moves that we're talking about, Peyz and Guma, because the rest of them is a little bit more up in the air. Yeah, I think Guma going to actually, in terms of like legacy and a whole bunch of other stuff, obviously this is a critical moment now in league history in terms of, well, we're moving beyond the ZOFGK roster. Zeus and Guma very likely to be on HLE, because I think the word is that Zeus is re-signing there. We're not sure on that. I suppose it's not like official, but that's likely to be there. And yeah, they have a chance now to kind of forge their own history outside of T1 as well. And reminder that I think the only 2 people to win international tournaments after leaving T1, right, were, let's have a think. Well, Scout was a trainee, that doesn't really count in terms of main roster, technically. Zeus has now with First Stand, and Duke did it with 2018 Worlds on an IG, and he was a part of that roster. Yes, he wasn't necessarily quote-unquote the starting top laner because the Shy was in there, but he did play games at Worlds and stuff like that too. I don't think anyone else ever did, question mark. Marin certainly didn't, Bengi didn't. Bang and Wolf didn't. Well, technically Peanut did because he won first stand, right? But that was many years later. But technically Peanut's done that as well because he played on SKT in 2017.
Good point.
And I can't. Maybe there's someone else, but I can't remember anyone else outside of there. So they have a chance to actually, show that they can do something off of the T1 organization, which has not typically been a thing. Typically, players which have left that has been, a huge thing. But this is going to be very important, and Kira's already highlighted this already. But Guma is someone that we consider to be a systems player, where he's very good at playing within the framework the team gives him. And typically what that means for Guma is that the whole team played around, I think when Guma was at his best, when it was Guma and Keire, I think that Guma and Keire were the best prio pushing bot lane in history. I don't think actually many people come close. They were so good at just finding these random picks to break a meta, like when they had the double range supports at various points. That flip in champion pool arguably won them 2023 Worlds, and I think their bot lane prio was a huge thing of that. I think Guma has been very, very good at using those first few levels to get a lead and then unlock Keire onto the map. So he's very good at unlocking a roaming support and then remaining safe. As we mentioned on the last episode as well, something which Keire mentioned is that Guma is very good at kind of taking the risk of saying, I'm going to push 12 waves, and if I die on the 12th after pushing 11 waves, the amount of resources I've given my team by pushing 11 then dying on the 12th is completely fine because that set up the map for success. So there's a lot of things he does well when the team has a clear plan and has a structure in which he can go towards. I think compared to a player like Viper, who HLE had before, Viper was better at just making the structure himself and play it. He made his own envelope, which is that's alien for an AD carry. An AD carry very rarely determines the safe space which they have to play within, because you have to have a top lane appealing for you, a jungle appealing for you, a mid laner being secondary DPS. Viper somehow did all of his own stunts without that being a thing, which is why I valued his World Championship performance, even though it ended at quarterfinals so highly this time around. So for me, there is going to be a huge question about how HLE, especially with Peanut now retiring as well, who comes in to fill out this roster and have a clear identity of how to play the game? Will they just play towards Zeus like T1 did in 2023, or they're a very top side-centric team? Will they play a bit more towards Guma and try and play towards prior bot lanes or something like that? What's the plan there? Because obviously Zeus and Guma are very, very successful together on the roster of T1. That's a whole kind of bag which we need to... That's just a whole mystery until that roster comes together and we figure out the systems and the meta going into next year. So Peyz coming in from LPL, obviously a less watched region than the LCK. What has Peyz been doing? How's he been doing? Is this a downgrade for T1? My answer to that in short is I think this can be a stylistic upgrade because Doran is on the roster, or it could just be a side grade which allows them to play differently than they did before. Obviously, you're not going to be the same player as Guma. I think Peyz and Guma are stylistically very different players. What Peyz does is he indexes more towards hyper carries. He is a very, very... You've mentioned stuff like his... FLS and whatever before. He's arguably the best Zeri player in the world, up there with players like Ruler. Like, this guy is absolutely insane at that champion. He's a very good Kai'Sa as well, which Kai'Sa's a bit weird in that she can be a hyper carry, but sometimes falls off in late game. This guy's fucking great at it. Just forget about the ult across the Dragon Pit in 24 semifinals in that last game against HLE. That was really pretty bad. But he does also play stuff like the Ezreal, which, I mean, SKT used to be famous for that when they had Bang and they had Piglet before it, right? It used to be their pick and Teddy as well. But obviously in the Guma years, stuff like the Ezreal wasn't as much their bread and butter. Peyz has had more early lane dominance in this year. Again, something that Keire mentioned than he did before. I think he took a little bit more into his own hands. He's still an excellent Kalista, still an excellent Lucian as well. What held Peyz back this year was not actually his individual performance, which I think was excellent. I think this guy was elo held for half the year. I think in summer he was a bit off, and then towards the very end of the year, I think he just a bit phoned it in mentally. And it was Xiaoshu, JDG's top laner, that was really doing the legwork on that team. He did, however, have to play on a team with the worst year of Scout's career ever. He was really bad. 3 different supports in the same year, and Shun, who was on and off as well. And then there was even top laner change throughout the year too. That is the players that he was playing with. And also, it was a multi-language team where Scout had to translate for him, and that caused huge issues with comms. This is something that Doomby brought up on stream midway through this year, where it's like, okay, when Ruler played on GDG, he also wouldn't communicate, but he would just make his own plays so well that he would just kind of get away with it. Whereas Peyz was trying to play to the comms and is like, what the fuck what do we need to do? Because it has to go through this like linked communication of him speaking to Scout, speaking to teams, speaking to Scout, speaking to him, or whatever. And that meant that his individual performance couldn't always lead to stylistic team wins for JDG, who were just they were such a poor team at kind of like clutch team fighting. They were one of the most anti-clutch team fighting teams in the entire LPL. Weirdly, they were still very good versus BLG because Scout just has Knight's number for whatever reason.
Guidelines.
It's just a weird old team. A bunch of stuff like that. But yeah, I think personally, I think Peyz has had an excellent year individually. I think that now that Doran and Peyz are there together, we will probably now see more of the traditional, I suppose, the Genji style of play, where you have a peeling top laner for a hyper carry AD carry, which is not necessarily something that this modern era of T1 has done. So stylistically, that's how I view both Guma and Peyz. Obviously, I know it's a huge rant and a monologue, but that's my overall thoughts.
Yeah, I think. Do we know yet, or are there strong rumors yet about who Lee's jungler's going to be? Because
there were some rumors there was Canyon, but now there's rumors that Canyon's re-signing, and then I have no idea.
But I think obviously it's like not a trade or whatever, but I feel better about this off season, even though a couple of like sort of underwhelming things from a lot of people's perspectives have happened, than I do for like Lee. I think Lee is looking like not wonderful. I think Peanut retiring is obviously a massive thing, not just because obviously his like individual performance in the server, but we know how much of a sort of voice and in-game leader that guy can be. I'm not really sure, unless, you know, Kanavi or, you know, Tarzan or someone just randomly like shows up on that roster, like how much faith I'm actually going to have in Lee being like a serious top contender. Whereas with T1, it's like, I guess it's one of those things where you won't know until you know kind of thing, but we attribute a lots of sort of ethereal intangibles to loads of players on T1, right? Like, obviously, Faker sort of speaks for himself. That's the one I think everyone feels like fairly confident in, even though we don't have all of the insider information. We have just such a massive body of evidence that we're like, okay,
yeah, the
this
data
guy,
on it is
this
unbelievable.
guy. But we do also attribute like similar things to people like Guma, like Keire, even like Owner in spots, and it's definitely Zeus. When Zeus was on T1, we're like, there's just something a little bit different where they can just flip a series with whatever, like enter in data point 1 of intangible, right? I think it's going to be really interesting to see on HLE what kind of a player Guma is away from T1. I think that's going to be super interesting because we have all these ideas in our head about that he's very much attached to the magic of T1 sort of narrative. Let's see. By the way, I don't have a strong opinion on it either way. I have no idea how it's going to pan out. But I think there's lots of question marks on this HLE team, even around Zeus, by the way. I think something that's like interesting that I sort of intimated on Twitter, which is purely speculative, but I do think that T1 with Doran, and this isn't any disrespect to Doran, I think this might be a Keane waiting room year for them, because I actually do think Keane will be selected as the Asian Games top laner, and I think obviously much more likely than not Korea will win Asian Games. So I don't actually think Keane will have to do military service, and I think he'll be available for T1, or indeed for anyone else if they want to, the following year. So I think that's going to be a really interesting domino that eventually we'll have to follow. I don't think Zeus was like amazing all year or something. Like, I don't think we saw the absolute best of Zeus this past year. So I don't know. I think HLE is going to be really interesting. You've now got Zeus and Gumayushi on a team together, away from Faker and away from the T1 brand, with a jungler who's not going to be Peanut, with Zeka, who I don't want to say his stock like tanked, but it's not like Zeka had like an amazing year this year either. Like, I don't know. I think HLE is so many question marks around that team. And again, I'm not critical of the move. I think it's fun in a way that Guma's doing something else. But HLE might not be very good next year. Obviously, they won't be bad.
There's one rumor that Kanavi's joining them as jungler, by the way.
Yeah, sure. If that happens, yeah, sure. I mean, that's why I asked. Like, and obviously, if Kanavi or Tarzan or someone like joins that team, then sure. Then I will reevaluate as new evidence presents itself. But if that doesn't happen, then yeah, I don't know. Big question marks. Sorry, go on, Keire.
You've kind of got to consider here, right, that HLE's went out and got that Guma, right, okay? Are they going to just leave themselves like dry and not end up with like the team that makes the most sense, which is just to have like Kanavi join the team? Like, if you look at the way that like HLE has built their teams over the years, like I don't think they were going to do that. I'll be really surprised if he's not on the team. If Kanavi's not on the team with them all. It just looks like the most, you know what I mean, the perfect fit.
It looks like it should just happen. He should just, the square should fit in the square hole. Yeah, I mean, that is how.
But the thing is if we have Kanavi on that team, just as a little quick point, it might be the most aggressive Korean team of like all time. By the way, that might be the most aggro, like Korean. Delight, Kanafi, Guma, Zeka, and Zeus. What? That'll be mental. Like that'll be some. Also,
Yeah,
it could be like some of the most lane dominant like teams as well. It'd be nutty.
Yeah. But yeah, so we will wait to see on that one. As I just mentioned there, obviously Doran is staying on T1. I just believe it's a 1-year extension. As I said, I think that's because T1 probably want to have some flexibility at the end of next year. I thought it was slightly interesting, not surprising at all, but slightly interesting that there was zero talk about Zeus going back to T1. I think that, again, gives you further insight into probably how that dynamic was left when last those two parties spoke to each other. But again, in a weird way, because of how Korean culture works, and also because, you know, time heals many wounds. Not all wounds, but many wounds. I wouldn't even be amazed if maybe that conversation would take place at the end of next year as well. Like, I don't think any bets are off really when it comes to people coming and going from T1. So yeah, we'll see. But moving away from LCK for now, at least, one of the other biggest stories, of course, which sort of transcends multiple regions, is obviously Busio going to the LEC and joining KC. Now, this is one of those transfers which is more than just a roster move. It is the second consecutive year where we've seen one of the biggest, most important players from the North American region joining an LEC team. How times have changed. For people who didn't follow League in sort of the early professional years, sort of 2012 onwards, basically, if there was any movement, it was always going the other way. It was Europe's best talent or some of its better talent going to North America. We've never, ever saw a North American player coming to this region even until Cody Sun did, and that was on some also-ran team in the LFL, which no one gave a crap about.
It depends if you count Broken Blade, because obviously he was an LCS champion and then came over.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't count that at all, because he was Turkish.
He's not
in
an
the
resident
Turkish
player,
league.
but yeah.
He's more European than he is American, so I don't count that.
TSM discovered Broken Blade Rich. Come on, you got to give them the.
Yeah, they also discovered Bjergsen. Am I right? Like, I mean, what is this incarnation? Who knew about that guy before he went to NA? So yeah, I think this obviously Jojo Ping last year. Or this year just gone, and now Busio. You can argue like two of their top like 4 current talents are now going to be playing in LEC, which is obviously a huge blow to that region that seems to have been taking uppercuts and right hooks for like the last 2-3 years at this point. But also obviously a huge boon for EU and KC, not just because it's a cool storyline. I do actually think the Jojo move was great for LEC. We all hoped it would be. I think particularly how his arc over the year, like being really bad, if we're honest, to begin with, and then slowly but surely turning the script and becoming like a really good member of the league. I think that was an awesome storyline. I think Busio being easily the best North American support, if you're removing sort of era for era, probably one of the best ever supports out of North America coming to the LEC, which isn't exactly flushed full of support talent. I think that's just a really cool thing holistically in general. But yeah, Nymaera, what are your thoughts on this? Obviously from KC's perspective as well, because of course that means Targamas is not going to be playing for them, but also, you know, on the more holistic point of North American talent continuing to come to Europe.
Which one to start with? I suppose on the situation of EU to NA or NA to EU. In the past, obviously, NA was one of the financial hotspots of League esports. That is not really the case now. God, I mean, remember there was that one player for Team Liquid that made just the dumbass joke. I can't remember if it was for Rainbow Six or for Valorant. And they were playing a Japanese team, and he referenced like Hiroshima.
Oh, the bomb,
which is this, I cannot tell you how stupid that is, and that lost them their Honda sponsorship, which is why they're no longer Team Liquid Honda. Like that is one of the most expensive individual tweets in like esports history. Such a dumb thing to fly over my face. Such a dumb thing to do. Between stuff like that, and then also FlyQuest disbanding like this era of the roster as well. And I suppose Cloud9 going on. Do you know if Cloud9, would you consider that more of a budget move or not? I'm actually not sure about their financial state. Between stuff like that, and then also just venture capital drying up, and then the crypto boom drying up as well, In fact, crypto more than dried up; it just completely exploded the LCS financially because remember it was the FTX LCS and TSM FTX, and then obviously that all exploded. And venture capital drying up before that too. And it just doesn't have the financial power it had before, and it certainly doesn't have the social impact power before as it did anyway. Because English viewership really took a hit. I think stuff like formats and the rebranding of stuff was very difficult for them. Now they've had some bonuses too, I suppose, with trying to integrate different language viewerships, but it's very hard to sell to a multi-language audience, which is something that EU's found problems over the years, right? It's very easy to sell to a single language audience because all of your adverts only have to be in that language, whereas if it's across multiple languages and regions, you have to have companies which are active in all of those regions. In fact, this was a huge problem with the NLC back in the day too, and it still is, because no one broadcasts to the Nordics and UK and Ireland. They just do Nordics, or they just do UK, or they just do an individual company, or they do Europe as a whole, which wasn't the case for them, which is a real problem. And in the case of NA, it's like, well, we're doing all of NA, but then if you're trying to put through stuff to your CBLOL viewers or something like that, well, you're going to get a company which does to both North America and also Brazil as well, or also, of course, Latin America as well with the LATAM teams. Basically, the overall thing is, over the years, a lot of the more staple forms of financial investment have not been nearly as strong for NA, from my understanding. And that has meant that you can't just throw just a huge paycheck at players. And unlike, say, 2015, 2016, when you just had a ton of EU players going over there. It started with stuff like Bjergsen, as you said, but it ended up being, Sven and Mithy went over.
Yellowstar.
You mentioned that too. Yellowstar went over there as well. There were a bunch of European players. Froggen, of course, as well. God. Febiven, a bunch of players went over that. Hansamari, God, look, there's like a dozen plus players, and if anyone starts coming into the conversation like, oh man, Europe's stealing all the talent, this is like a drop in the bucket compared to some historical talent which went over.
I mean, NA's best player right now is Inspired, who, spoiler alert, is European, so...
No way, European, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, right?
But yeah, so... I think financially there's less of an incentive, and then also pretty much every player has said that the practice environment over there in terms of solo queue is really poor. In fact, I think Don Jake had... God, who did he have on that was talking about this? Don Jake had an interview with someone... Well, it would have been Inspired.
Yeah, it would have been Inspired, yeah.
And Inspired was saying basically, when he was challenger for the first time when he was like 14 or whatever, he'd meet a pro player every 3 games or something, or maybe even more often that in Europe. And then you go to NA and it's like, well, maybe 1 in 10 games you'd have it as a pro player, and the rest of the time you just filled with like one tricks and whatever. People who, it's just the quality of the gameplay was just a lot lower in NA solo queue, and people have said it in as many different ways over the years. So I think on a professional level, a lot of people don't believe that they'll get the best practice environment over in NA. I think FlyQuest, and you nucleate all the talent like that, and I guess previously Team Liquid teams in the past which did the same thing, you had a realistic chance of making internationals and maybe even doing something international too. I mean, NA's not had awful results internationally in the last few years. 5 games versus Gen.G, quarterfinals. NRG made it to quarterfinals too. I think NA's actually been enjoying quite a decent period of international performances from them over the last couple of years, comparative to how I think community perception sometimes was very, very down on NA. But I think now the case is, okay, well, FlyQuest is starting to split up, so that left Busio without, like a mega team to go towards a super team. And also the financial incentive is not always there. And also it just feels like you're probably going to develop better in Europe because there's just a way bigger pool of players. So naturally, I think it makes sense for NA players to look more towards Europe. Jojo, of course, coming the year before, ended up coming over. And I think Jojo actually had a pretty good year on the whole after the winter, which was a bit meh. Then I suppose on to KC specifically. I don't think Targamas had a bad year, actually. I actually think he did pretty well compared to expectations. I think he was pretty damn good. I think the meta kind of fell away from Karmine Core when it became more about more aggressive jungle supports towards the end of the year. And of course, just a whole load of team stuff went wrong for them. But while I don't think Targamas did badly, Busio was clearly the best Western support this year. So this is an upgrade on paper.
Yep. No, can't disagree with that. What do you think, Keire? Excited for Busio?
I think if EU isn't going to transfer some of its talent to support, transition their excess midlaners, their excess veterans, their excess ADCs into support, then you're going to have to import them. Yeah, because the region just naturally isn't producing enough of them. For whatever reason, could be a lot of factors. Not really going to go into them here. bringing in Busio, like, it's fine. Is it the case that he doesn't take up an import slot because he's got a Polish passport?
I'm actually not sure what the things are because in the past it was you had to play like 3 out of the last 5 splits or years in a region, I think it was, which obviously wouldn't be the case. I'm not sure how it is now because obviously there's stuff about like green cards from NA which apply to residency there. I'm actually not sure. This is something which I think Riot needs to clarify.
You're telling me that even NA's best ever support player is actually European? Damn.
Like older players, yeah. Rich, in some sense, anyway. Yeah. Unless it's double lift. What do you call it? Yeah, I think it's a whatever burger, mate. Support's so weird because, like, unless it's literally just, like, you're going and getting, like, a top shooter, you know what I mean? Like, you're going and getting, like,
Keire, let's go.
Yeah, you're going to get like, Keire. You're going and getting, like, Mako, Mang. You know what I mean? Unless you're going and getting like some top like player. Support's just what you're. The support role is just defined in every team by like what the team does with that. So Busio could be a very, very different player. Like you have this idea of who he is on
FlyQuest.
On FlyQuest, but that version of Busio might never play a single game for KC. And you see this with Duro. You know what I mean? Like Duro was a completely different player on Gen G. So I don't know. On the general point, I think it's a decent move overall. You might have a bit more depth than Targamas, in terms of like the packs and stuff that he can play. So for Fearless, it could be better.
I mean, I think I definitely trust him more than Targamas. The thing is, like, Targamas had like good periods of play this year, for example, but did you ever really like actually trust him that he'd be like good in a series or something? I mean, only speaking for myself, but I definitely didn't, because I've seen too many massive periods of time where Targamas has been complete trash, that the periods of time where he's actually been like good as well were always kind of surprised. Like, to me, it was always like, actually, you know, it's been playing quite well this bit, Targamas. It was always like with an inflection of surprise. Like,
I mean, again, after last year, you can understand that, but I think basically after Winter and First Stand, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm on the Targamas train. I think he was doing pretty well then.
But what's interesting, though, by the way, because again, like, it's a classic where I say, you know, no matter how, and obviously it's to some extent playing devil's advocate against the very ferocious KC fan base. But for everyone who says, like, you know, oh, what about now? Look at Targamas now. I always say, like, yeah, he's playing well. I'm never going to say a player's not playing well when they're playing well. But he's still a mute, buddy. I know people tell me that he, you know, oh, he's actually contributing way more to comms. I'm sure he's talking more. I'm sure he is. But guess what? He's been dropped. That's not for fun. It's not because KC wants to lose. It's because they believe that Busio is a significant upgrade worth taking. And again, that's not even a slight at Targamas. I think he was massively better this year than he was last year. And I will not know all of the reasons for why various people no longer want to play with him. But I'm just going to go ahead and guess that some of the issues that were always there, probably still there. That seems like it's probably the most likely reasoning, doesn't it? So yeah, anyway, I'm excited for it. One, because I think taking another of NA's best players and seeing all the NA representatives crash out on Twitter is just hilarious. But also because I think he will bring up the level of the region potentially. I think KC might end up building a really interesting team. I'll say interesting for now rather than good, because, you know, it could still, you know, be go in different ways. But I think they'll be a very interesting team to watch next year. So I'm all for it. But again, by that token, Busio obviously to KC, you know, Inspired's obviously left FlyQuest. The talent is fracturing even more than we're used to in North America. Where, Keire, does this leave the North American region? As Nymaera pointed out, they've actually had relatively comparable to Europe, like pretty equal international success, you'd have to say, over the last couple of years. But they did generally have standoutish teams. You know, the FlyQuest team that took Gen G to 5 games, that was just a good League of Legends team that had good League of Legends players on it for the most part, right? It doesn't seem like they're likely to have a single good roster next year, at least from what I can see, in terms of having a good international ceiling. What are your thoughts on North America as a region now going into next year, Keire? Do you think we're just going to see a complete fall off from where they've been recently internationally?
NA has always been like a weird region. NA, more than any other region, is hurt by the segregated nature of the leagues. Really hurt NA. It was already like a really top-heavy region. It's always been quite top-heavy as well. Like you've never looked at like the sixth and seventh best teams in NA. And maybe, the best year of NA probably ever for the aggregate level was probably
2014 maybe?
No, 2016 or 2018 when franchising first came around and all the EU players went over, and 2016 when it was the BO3s and you had like the TSM Immortal like teams.
Oh yeah, TSM Immortals were actually, and then Cloud9 were actually still relevant then. And
Yeah, but I mean like across the whole league, I think that's when it was at like the best, where like a Nero was able to beat them in like a BO3 and stuff like that. Like, bro, I'm someone who religiously watched NA for like years, and then like I think it was like 2023, maybe 2023 summer, I had to give up. Like I just didn't care. Like I was actually forcing myself to watch it. It's like, bro, like the storylines are boring, the fucking players are boring, like the broadcasts are absolute snooze fest, like. Like the hype, they really struggled to transition out of the Bjergsen double lift era for a variety of different reasons. You know, like double lift and Bjergsen retiring was like fucking Faker retiring. You know what I mean? And for that region, you know what I mean? For that region, I'm saying like.
I think they could have rode it out with EG, but then EG kind of had everything go wrong with them, right? With Danny, and then just the org collapsing, right? That could have saved them, but.
Yeah, and I'm sympathetic to that, but like, what I'm also like, I find really frustrating is just like the formats that have been in NA. Anyone could have told you with half a brain they're all going to be terrible. They're like they all sucked. The TL team of yesteryear, the one last year with like Impact, that was an interesting team. I feel like they were really cool team. For playing to their like identity, they really knew who they were. They lived up to my adage very well, and they, you know what I mean, they almost beat. They had good games versus T1, but where like I don't see where these teams are going to be. I think that it's going to be FlyQuest C9, and.
Not we'll see what happens with Sentinels, right? I mean, Sentinels, like, we'll see how ambitious they get. Also worth noting with C9 as well, Reaper is now no longer their head coach because Reaper is going to Karmine Core as well. So Karmine Core have had their coaching change, and it's now Nero as the coach of Cloud9. So that actually could be quite big too.
I think going and getting Reaper as the head coach is another fucking weird one. Again, I don't know what Reaper does. I just look at his like track record of his like his teams and stuff like that. Always been a weird one for me.
I assume
you're not hyped about Lion though, with getting inspired Berserker. Not hyped for that.
No, not really. Like, I would prefer if Inspired and Berserker actually put like just a good team around them of EU players. Like this team is like, and domestically it's going to do something, but I've stopped caring about any domestically. Like, and so now I only have to measure the teams on how good they'll be internationally. Like, I don't know.
I do agree. I definitely agree with that sentiment. That so far as I care about NA now, I'm not going to pretend like I was always, you know, a massive NA enjoyer or whatever. But my only interest in NA now, personally, is if they can put together something interesting internationally. I really am not going to spend any time looking through their rosters and being like, who's going to be top 4 during the split? Like, I don't give a flying fuck who the 4th best team in North America is. I just care that if they come up against Europe, will it be a competitive match? Can they do something to an Asian team? Those are the things that I care about. So for me, it's like, I mean, has Berserker even developed that much since like leaving America and coming back? Like, he was kind of a whatever in LCK when he went back to LCK for my money.
Individually, he was good. It's
in LCK, individually it was pretty good, decent, right?
And again,
it was on a barbaric
like,
team, mate.
Sure,
but like backtracking to what we were saying about AD carries earlier, like AD carries kind of have to play within the particularly in like modern league. AD carries don't really get to determine what they can do. They just play within the bounds which their team sets them. And if you've got a shit team, how do you look good as an AD carry, you know?
Of course. I mean, I'm not saying I expected, you know, fireworks and some 1v9s on an LCK level. I don't know. Personally, I think I watched every single Berserker game in LCK. No, actually, that's definitely not
And-
true. I watched like a huge chunk of them, and I wasn't like blown away by Berserker in LCK. I know it's obviously a different level of play. It's not like playing against fucking Bob and Joe in North America, but I don't know. Whatever. I guess my main point is I don't think having Inspired and Berserker on one team in North America is enough to do anything whatsoever interesting unless you actually put other really good pieces around them. And I think that NA is now the talent's so segregated across teams. It looks like that you want in NA, you actually want a top heavy region right now. You want a really top heavy region. That would be what would make the region interesting. In LEC, I thought we benefited this year to a certain extent from having more talent throughout the region. We just seem to have more like talent in general, which I think is a good thing, and it's also why I'm also happy that Busio is coming over. But yeah, I think NA right now in the state that it's in, you need to develop your storylines through having like one awesome team or like two really good teams.
You do have a couple. Like there are a couple of things which I'm interested in. Like Sentinel's obviously a huge org in Valorant. I'm interested to see how they take over from 100 Thieves, who have now bowed out. Obviously sad considering their last Worlds run was actually very notable. You've got like Gatkos and Griffin coming in for FlyQuest, which is, you know, that's kind of exciting for them to kind of pick up the reins of this excellent team from NA from the last few years. Problem is, losing Busio, I think, destabilizes that team, because basically, I think in 2023, really, we learned the secret to building a great team is you need to have good jungle support synergy. I don't think it's possible to be a top team in the world if you don't have good jungle support. So bringing in a rookie jungler, I say rookie, Griffin did play, he was playing on another team before, right? But basically, if you're bringing in a new jungle, we'll put it that way, and then you have, you don't have an existing support synergy to work around there, you are kind of rolling the dice. So now you're just hoping that they pick up someone who can somehow fill the shoes of Busio, very hard given how good he was, but then also gives you a backbone for the team to function stylistically, which is, a huge problem.
Yeah, but again, Nymaera, like, this is all nice and dandy or whatever, but do you actually have any faith in any of these teams being remotely relevant internationally? Because that, for me, as I said, is like the crux of it, and I do not see...
So the thing is that I don't see them being as relevant as FlyQuest, so it is going to be a downgrade from that. But I'm interested in seeing how they develop, but yeah, it's more like, whereas I think FlyQuest could top out beating, well, I guess they never did beat an Asian team in a best of 5, right? I think they never did.
Nope.
But,
yeah, I think they could have topped out at it, yeah.
I think they could have pushed it over the line there. Sadly, they didn't, which is disastrous for them, given that they couldn't do it versus Genji, and then they went on to fail against a weakened BLG at MSI, which is that's like your golden chalice. Yeah. That is you look at BLG this year, and if you can't beat them,
that's and the freest hit in terms of like a team which has so much prestige but is so beatable. And it's also Eastern. That is like the best moment in time ever, probably in League, where it's like, if you beat them, you get to look back in 10 years and be like, bro, that Night Bin team, I beat them on a Western team.
Well, that's what happened with 100 Thieves, right?
Well, exactly.
Everyone's gonna look at like Dokla being, holy shit, Big Dokes beat Night and Bin.
Exactly.
As much as there's context around it, that's always an accolade. Context aside, which you can give them, and yes, there are a lot of caveats to it. BLG were really shit, but if you couldn't manage that, and it's compared to their level, right? They
did just look really shit, Nymaera. You were right the first time.
I know. I'm trying to give I'm trying to give the appropriate amount of flowers, because obviously 100 Thieves had zero expectations and they did do better than that. It's still notable for them.
No, that's the
thing.
I
think it's like the biggest moment of the year? No, but it's still notable, right?
I do actually think like that is still okay. If like G2 or someone beat BLG, it is like you're meant to beat BLG, by the way. Like, you're meant to be the best Western team. They look fucking terrible. You're meant to beat them. I think when you're 100 Thieves, the context actually doesn't matter that much. It's like, you are garbage. Like, let's be real. In the context of the world tier list, right? You are garbage. And no matter how bad or sinking form BLG are on, that's a fucking awesome historical win for them. So I'm happy that they got that. I don't think anything else matters. Again, it's not the same as if G2 or someone beats them. It's whatever. But yeah, I assume the reason Reapered, Casey wanted Reapered to answer Kira's inquiry is basically to make Canna stop talking about wanting to go home every split. I mean, I think that's probably a big part of it. I think they want someone who speaks Korean to, try and bridge gaps and make him feel more at home and less tilted and yada, yada, yada. I also imagine, again, this is not a Targamas hate train or anything, but environment-wise, because everything that's come out about Casey was the environment got really bad because of various things, because of what certain members of staff who are no longer there were maybe involved in, because of some of Vladdy's behaviour that may or may not have happened. But I think Targamas as a player as well also is not a good team environment kind of player, and Kanna probably felt very isolated as the sole Korean on that team that seemed to just be plummeting towards the ground. So I guess Reaper's coming in to also hopefully bolster those kind of relationships, and with those two players also both outgoing, I think hopefully Casey will be a much better environment going into next year. But again, that's probably going to be it in terms of LEC talking points for this week, guys. As I said, we'll do a full breakdown of all the rosters.
We know you want us to talk about SK. We know that, but like we kind of need to wait until everything's finalized, so we don't have to do like a half-hearted and then go like, oh, there was this extra thing. You know, for LEC, we'll wait to do the full shebang at some point.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on to China. Obviously, again, lots of more speculative stuff, but we're less likely to be attacked for any missteps in this episode because loads of people don't pay attention to China in the West.
Wait, hang on. Before we go on to that, do we want to hit on the Talon stuff just before we do this? Because that's a quick one to do.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm just aware that this is like one of the huge fucking stories from today. It's not like a crazy one to like talk about in terms of length. Effectively, formerly PSG Talon, now Talon, were dropped with their sponsor, and more importantly, kicked out of the fucking LCP and VCT because they were failing to pay their co-streamers, coaches, and players. So LCP actually swung the fucking axe down on them. Talon are out of LCP. Talon, as an organization, have posted about this, saying that they accept the ruling, so it's not going to be fought like that in any kind of way. This comes after a public Twitter spat earlier in the year as well, where Talon's owner was arguing with someone who had lent them a lot of money, and that blew up publicly as well. Apparently,
good idea.
Apparently Karsa, their jungler, didn't find out about it until like today on the stream, and he was joking with one of the other players, because effectively, guys, it goes beyond this, right? Well, because apparently Talon, when they qualified for Worlds, the players had to pay for their flights and accommodation to Worlds, where effectively they were told, you've earned the right to pay for your flights and hotels to Worlds. This shit is like being paid in mouse mats. This is the kind of thing which I'd get in amateur stuff. Saying,
I can get behind that, Nymaera. You see, that's what a salary's for. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know, man. So basically, Talon, which are one of the most recognizable teams from that region's history, I think there are only two teams, I think, in front of them in terms of recognition from APAC as a region, which are Gama Esports, and then Flash Wolves are probably the only two teams from that region which are more recognizable than PSG. Maybe you could go back to AHQ or something like that. Losing a team like that is horrid for the tapestry of the league, but also good on LCP for actually pulling the trigger. If teams are not paying and they're pulling shenanigans like that, get rid of them. Teams have gotten away with some bad shit over the years. I think it's good that they do actually swing the hammer down on them. It is obviously now going to leave open a partnered spot within the LCP, because they have kind of like the half franchise model, but I think 4 of the teams are partnered and then 4 of them aren't, 2 of them going to relegation. So then with the feeder leagues, they can kind of change in and out. I don't know which team would come in. Maybe one of the PCS teams that didn't make the cut, like Deep Cross Gaming, something like that, could make it in. Maybe an OS team makes it back because Chiefs lost in the relegation, so there's no current OS team in there. So that's happened. That's crazy. And then I suppose the other LCP news is Kaiwing has officially left CFO despite having another year on his contracts. Apparently him and Doggo argued all the time, so that might add into it. And then also Arya has left DFM. He might go towards Hawks, and Hawks might actually be relevant next year. That said, I don't know whether Arya could also go elsewhere as well. He's kind of been 1v9 on DFM for a while, ever since Utspawn's gone. That's all the LCP news, just in a quick little bucket. Any thoughts?
I mean, all I'll say is, I'm curious who was responsible for paying, or indeed not paying, the players properly on time, whatever the case may be, because I was minutes away from signing a very long-term contract with PSG over a partnership way back in the day, and I wonder for how long those funds would have been reliable at this point. Who knows?
So the statement from Talon said that the payment from their latest round of funding was delayed, and that's why it ended up racking up. That doesn't give us much context, though, but that's what they said in their statement.
Sure. Yeah, I would, to be honest, I would actually imagine it would have had nothing to do with PSG. From knowing a bit about how they work, it would have been a licensing deal anyway, so I highly doubt that would have translated to we pay the players directly. So yeah, probably. I would just... Well, I'm not saying I'll take them as read because I don't know, the ins and outs, and orgs have a habit of, or a weird relationship with the truth sometimes, let's say, so who knows. But anyway, moving on. Actually, that reminds me, just, very quickly, not going to talk about the roster stuff too much, but just to address Mickey addressing me. I'm not going to, throw around words like, misinformation or lying or anything like that. All I'll do very briefly is just lay out the facts, right? And the actual facts, not speculative facts, the actual facts. And then you guys can make your own decision. So Mickey, right, says that he never wanted Caps to be replaced by Leader while he was on G2, right? Okay, interesting. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. Let's just lay out what we do know. We do know, by the way, because he's actually admitted it when he was pressed on it by Don Jake, that he did want his mid laner replaced when he was on XL. He did want his mid laner replaced previously when he was on Fnatic. By the way, always for Leader. He has wanted his mid laner replaced on every lineup he's ever been on, which wasn't Caps, right, as far as we know, for Leader. So those are the facts. And Mickey X said himself that, no. I never wanted Leader to replace Caps on G2. I just wanted him to join G2 and then be like Caps' one-on-one sparring buddy, because I thought he could really help him. But the org said no. That's a bit weird. Why would the org say no? That seems strange. It's like a freebie. Like, just bring in one of these helpers, Alfari to help with top lane or whatever. Or, there've been loads of examples of people just bringing in help that you don't even really pay most of the time. They just come in and do a bit of positional coaching every now and then. Obviously, Memento's done it with Jungle with a bunch of different teams. But G2 said no. That's very strange. It's almost like... whatever. I won't inject it with anything else. Like, maybe on this.
Do you want my opinion?
Sure, give your opinion. By the way, I know what actually happened, so I don't really care. But go on.
I believe Mickey X. I think he's telling the truth. I think if you look at the facts and the way that you portrayed that there, I believe Mickey X.
Yeah, I believe. By the way, what I will actually say is I can believe that Mickey X never straight up said we should replace Caps with Leader. In fact, if I had to guess, I would guess that those words or words similar to that probably never came out of his mouth. But I definitely believe that this weasel was trying to weasel in Leader into G2. Absolutely, with the end goal being that he would play for G2. That, I think, is like... Again, feel free to look at all of the evidence and deny it. But, I mean, if you've never been up in a rocket, I guess you can't confirm whether the Earth's round or not. So... we all have our different ways of viewing the world, literally and metaphorically. So yeah, let's move on from that to LPL, because there's a lot going on in the wonderful land of China. Loads of weird stuff, which you guys can obviously be more specific with in terms of like how this weird salary thing changes year on year. Loads of rumors about different team building aspects, as we've already mentioned, possibly Kanavi leaving the region entirely. I don't know if that's possibly even the same for Tarzan. Viper maybe joining LPL, possibly with Knight, who knows. Tarbe, I believe, is mid-decision as of recording as to where he may or may not end up. So yeah, Nymaera, what do you think are sort of the biggest stories and moving pieces to look out for here?
Okay. So it's worth noting that basically a couple of teams, notably BLG and JDG, maybe Top Esports, were all fighting over a couple of key players, notably Knight. Knight was being fought over basically by JDG and by BLG, as was Viper, although I can't remember if other teams were also interested in him too. But JDG's general manager was in Kenju's chat, and Kenju is was the coach of RNG, and he's a big figure within the LPL scene. And he said that he said in Kenju's chat, BLG Viper 100%. So we're hearing that from a team that was fighting over Viper saying, yeah, BLG's got him. So it's now likely Viper is going to BLG. I don't know where Elk goes because of that. So he's now out on the market. We'll see. However, IG They will be trying out. They'll be having a different bot lane. Mako has announced that he's taking a break. Now that's not a retirement. He's taking a break, but basically he said, "Look, I've been playing for 10 years. I'm an old guy now. I need to take a break to play at my best." There are rumors that Jack11369 are going to be Jack11 might not play at all. He might be taking a break. Jack11369 might be taking a 1 or 2 split break. Basically, Doomby is re-retiring. Scout is going to the LCK to play on Nongshim, likely, so JDG don't have a mid laner there. Tabe has left anyone's legend, but the team... So he's done the same fucking thing that BLG have done, basically, where the team is re-signed and then Tabe's left, basically. So anyone's legend, everyone has stayed, Tabe's gone to JDG. JDG are at a weird spot where they're changing... I think Xiaoshu's staying, but I think everyone else on that roster is now likely going, depending on whether Shun goes back to BLG. But Tabe is joining JDG, so that means he'll be playing with, Xiaoshu. Vampire might be his support. That'll be interesting, because I think Vampire, he's very flashy, but he needs to learn how to play macro. Tabe might be able to beat that into him, because that's the thing which is holding Vampire back right now. Kanavi might be going to LCK as well, so that's another huge player going. And then, of course, outside of all that stuff, FPX is gone from LPL. FPX, one of the World Championship organizations, is the second World Championship organization after Type A Assassins, who then became J-Team. They dropped out of the LCP last year, so they were the first World Championship lineage org to drop out of League of Legends, and they will now be the second. Now, Keire, you might have to update me on this one, because you sometimes have the specific details down better than me on this. I believe the situation is... There are about 4 LPL teams that want to leave the LPL, but LPL only wants 2 teams at a time to leave. Last year, it was 1. That was Rare Atom, so it dropped from 17 teams down to 16 teams. This year, I believe it is RNG, LGD, FPX. I can't remember the 4th one. You'll have to forgive me on that one. But there are 3 or 4 teams which want to leave the LPL. FPX just happened to be one of the ones leaving this time. Which is a huge shame. They're part of the tapestry of the LPL. They had their own song written by Chrissy Constanza, which wasn't Phoenix, the 2018 World Song or whatever. It was just another one which they came out on stage to. They'd really left their mark on the league scene. Of course, they fell off after 2021 with that disastrous Worlds exit from them. But now they're gone as well.
By the way, very quickly before we talk about any of these things in sort of more depth, do you guys, obviously as avid LPL watchers, do you actually think, forget about the what it means in terms of finances of League of Legends and the shifting expectations and money drain that is China right now for this? That aside, do you actually think it's a good thing from a viewer/fan perspective that there are increasingly fewer teams in the LPL? Obviously, there'll be a cutoff point where it gets worse. You don't want 3 teams, but you know what I mean. Because obviously a big criticism that's always been levied at regular season is that it has obnoxiously long and uninteresting regular seasons for a lot of people, at least for more casual viewers. Do you think this could actually be a somewhat of a good thing, make it a more approachable league from that sense?
Well, covering the LPL has been a bitch. Like I've streamed 1,000 hours of LPL basically this year. It's very, very, very difficult. I couldn't actually manage to do all of it, and that was when we had 16 teams instead of 17. This is a multi-layered question, because I think this has to do with the talent pipeline of LPL, because I think in the past, when LDL was churning out just non-stop amounts of players which could compete at an LPL level, you kind of wanted more slots to give them an extra chance to showcase what they could be made of. I think since basically gaming laws for under 18s got more strict, I think that was back in 23, or was it 22? A couple of years ago, either way. Now, that doesn't mean that under 18s don't play games, because there are ways around that, right? You use like a family member's login details or whatever. But actually, as an org, you can't sign someone who's under 18, right? Because once it actually gets official, you can't really sign that, which means that LDL teams this is why we saw, say, for instance, this year and last year, people just picked up from solo queue instead of LDL teams because they just turned of age and they could play, right? Despite not having played an LDL before, because they were the hotshot rookies. LDL also getting hit with just massive scandals with match fixing, and that led to LDL not having a broadcast, despite it being, very successful.
By the way, guys, what's happened with Milky Way?
Milky Way had a lot of allegations against him. not adhering to competitive integrity,
Yeah.
which I mean, read between the lines, it would be something
Just very odd. Just so odd because I
Yeah.
remember so many people telling me there was no such thing as match fixing in LPL. I don't know, man. It's weird, bizarre, crazy.
So we don't know the specifics of that yet, and only when, like, I suppose, legal proceedings. Because I think the reason, and this is, I think, from what I was hearing from a couple of the people on LPL Twitter, the reason why there haven't been official statements on this is because Milky Way was getting police involved because he was saying, "I'm going to sue the person." With these claims."
Defamation. Yeah.
Yeah. So because there was actual legal processes, you can't just take precedent. You can't take the lead as the actual as the LPL at that point. You have to wait until legal proceedings are done, which is probably why we won't hear as many solid details. But yeah, from word is effectively he is permabanned from LPL, similar to Bo. Now I mistranslated it at first and I thought it was like a global ban. I don't think that's the case, but I think he's permabanned from LPL, similar to Bo.
It's usually a ban from China.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't know exactly what it is, whether that is because let's be honest, there are ways where you can kind of you're not match fixing the result, but you're saying, oh, we will make sure we don't get the first dragon or
spot betting,
first
basically.
blood or first turret. So you're doing it on specific stats and whatever.
Still match fixing.
Yep.
Which is, yes, and while it might not be the result of the game, which some people think, oh, well, you just run it down or whatever, and in some cases, perhaps that maybe is the case. I don't know.
By the way, just to be very clear, because again, I've seen some stuff over the years. People like sending me various things or whatever, and I'm not going to get too specific with this. But what I will say is every time I've ever spoken about or alluded to certain forms of quote-unquote match fixing, particularly in regards to China, the vast majority of the stuff that I have seen or be semi-privy to...
I think it's never game loss.
Exactly.
Yes,
it's almost
exactly.
always to do with Drakes, or even less specific than Drake, or sorry, more specific than Drakes. It's like just random small things that are easy. I mean, whatever the easiest controllable is that you can technically bet on, it's usually that shit. Let's put it that way. That isn't going to tangibly change the result of the game. So when people say match fixing, don't think like, oh, Milky Way, because again, this is all alleged anyway, right? He's not guilty of anything so far as I know, although the league obviously think he's guilty of something. But
yeah, FPX have said that he's like suspended indefinitely.
Yeah, but don't go back watching old Milky Way games and being like, see, I knew that this mistake was like on purpose so they'd lose the game. But like usually it is not the case that people are throwing the whole fucking game. Like there's no point as well when you can bet on things that don't impact games.
Also, it's actually a harder thing to control. But anyway, on you go, Nymaera. Continue, sorry, Paul.
Okay. This is about right. Where were we? So we're talking the Milky Way stuff, but basically, yes. Talent pipeline. That's where we're at because LDL was hit with a bunch of scandals, not dissimilar to this. Now, from what we can glean from Bo and what happened to him before, effectively, he came clean about it, but said perhaps he was coerced into it, I believe, as well. Which this happens in other sports scenes where effectively people are like, will do bad things to you, basically, or people
Yeah, but Bo was also very young and impressionable, and
sure,
there's a lot of built-in context there.
Yeah, so, and this is not to related directly to Milky Way, because I don't know what the hell happens there, but basically, this is somewhat of a known phenomena, I suppose. LDL didn't have a broadcast because of this, because I suppose it made it harder to actually place money on it, or disincentivized viewers to actually bet on it. Not sure exactly what happens with that. But between that and the under 18 gaming laws, which meant that basically people who are under 18 couldn't play the amount of hours of games you need to really actually get to a pro level. Worth noting that, Faker won Worlds basically while he would have been technically eligible to play now in LDL. And LCK CL and their academy system allows, very young players to basically come up through the ranks of the various tiers of competitive play. That means that effectively LPL, we're now starting to see this year and I suppose the next year, where some of that talent pipeline is starting to run dry when you're not just recycling players anymore, and we're kind of running through the last kind of cream of the crop of what came through from the LDL talent system in a more rigid way. There might be one or two players coming through, but it's not going to be at the same level. Players like Leave and 1xN are players which I've got my eyes on who are really coming up and doing well from that. So going back to the initial question, getting back on track to what you're saying about, is it good that the amount of teams is reducing or not? I think in the past it was actually pretty good to at least allow some players a chance to play against these top tier players. I saw like 1xN come up and do some crazy stuff on his first couple of games or whatever. Like he actually beat Prime Jackie Lovezeria as a Fellows, because this guy's a nutty Fellows, and that was really cool to see. And you maybe wouldn't have seen that if some of the bottom tier teams in LPL weren't around. However, now that the talent pipeline is starting to dry up a little bit more, funding's starting to dry up, audiences for the small games are basically non-existent as well. You probably do need to nucleate it now, and maybe someone trying to cover it. Quite glad that maybe we'll get last 3 series days where I have to wake up at 5 a.m. and do 3 back-to-back series, which can end up in a 9-game day.
Yeah. Yeah, Keire, what are your sort of thoughts on the current LPL season and where things are going? By the way, actually, before that, maybe Nymaera, you could like very briefly explain, because I don't think we've done it on a show, although I'm not sure, like the salary, how the salary thing is impacting all of this, because obviously it's not just a case of, oh, this team offers this player this. Like, you have to be much more sort of meticulous about how you build teams in LPL.
So there are 2 things. There is a salary cap, which actually Keire probably knows more about, so I'll let him talk about that. And then there's the second thing, which is the bidding pool, which is effectively like an auction. That is very different. I'll talk about the auction. I'll let Keire talk about the salary thing, because he actually has the specifics way more than me. But effectively what it boils down to is the better a player is statistically, the more you have to pay them, but you still have a limit on how much maximum you can pay as a team. And it doesn't always apply to imports. I might be oversimplifying things. But with the bidding pool, effectively, if you are a Chinese resident player, this doesn't apply to imports, and you played something like over 50% or like over 2 series or something like that in split 3 of the last year, or however much it was in split 3, so basically the split which qualifies you for Worlds, you cannot go directly to a team and say, let's work out a deal, I'll play for you. If your contract runs out, or you are free agent, you don't get to decide where you go. What you do is you can veto one team, and then every single team blindly puts a number to bid towards that player. Highest bidder wins. If it's equal, then effectively you go into a second round, and the better the org has done, that's bidding on you, has done, the more leverage they have in that second round, and it allows them to like tie break with like technically points that they earn from doing better in LPL and internationally. So what that means is that you can't, like, as players go, I want to go to this team because Knight's playing there, because Jackie Love's playing there, because, I don't know, Bin or 369 are playing there, or whatever. Tarzan, whoever you name. You just have to put your name into a blind hat. But this has basically meant that a load of players like, yo, fuck this. I'm going to, like, skip out on the first couple of splits, and then I'll just, I don't know, do a contract later, or I'll just come, or whatever. But basically it means that the whole way that you trade players between teams is completely all over the place. I still haven't begun to pass the implications of this, because it's just so wild. Basically, you can't like critically create a team now, or kind of like clinically create a team. You have to just lucky dip sometimes, and if you lose a bid, change plans.
Yep. So, like the big like takeaway is like, obviously, like Nymaera like talked about there, you've got like the statistics like thing. So like there's like a minimum on now. I will caveat this. My data could be somewhat outdated, but like it's good to like use this to optically like shape what it looks like inside your like mind, if you know what I mean. So basically, like a player like Knight who's won MSI and won MVPs and all that, there's like a minimum amount of money that he must take to stop him basically like taking less money and creating like super teams and creating like an unhealthy like league. The big like response to this, it was like all the like the Koreans like coming in all the time. So like you have to kind of like not be careful, but you have to kind of like think in the sense of like player mobility isn't the same for like Knight and other LPL players as it is for like Faker and you know what I mean and stuff like that. You have to kind of like really think of like, it's like moves will not happen that don't make sense, or they do make sense. Completely independent of like completely independent of them, like the optics of them. You know what I mean? You'll pick up a player who's like bad, but like he's more is more like he'll be picked up because of like his like salary cap and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like his like stats are worse, but he might be better optically. You know what I mean? As in like you think he's better than his like stats and stuff like that. The second thing that a lot of people need to like take into consider here is the majority of the rules that I ever read or had explained to me is that foreign players are exempt. So for like a period of time, it used to be 3. I think it's now 1 year. So or maybe like 2, right? But so basically, like Viper, like coming to like BLG is why like that makes sense. Because you then still have to stay. So like you have individual player salary caps, minimums, but then you also have an overall team salary cap, right? And to give you an idea, I think it's 2 million roughly, right? Some number around there. It's going down again, by the way. Maybe
And
like
that's like US
1.6.
dollar equivalent or whatever it is.
Yeah, like, US dollar equivalent. Faker gets paid more than the top four. Is it 7 million Faker reportedly gets paid, Rich? Something like that?
It's like 6, I think, but yeah.
Right, okay. The top three of LPL get paid, and now going to be the top four of LPL as teams get paid less than Faker. Now, that's just to optically think about it in your mind, like where the league like health is. The other thing you need to like kind of like consider about all this is like when people like won worlds, who's like playing with like who, and like player mobility. So if I'm looking at Elk, I think the likely place Elk's going to end up is IG. Like that's where more likely than not he's going to end up, because Elk hasn't won international like MSI or Worlds. Rookie and the Shy have. Rookie's stats for the LPL will be like bonkers. So like there's like a bunch of like minimum like payments.
Maybe
that are
go to
gonna be-
JDG if they're splashing money about though as well, because
Yeah.
is also there.
Yeah, so potentially you could have like Tabby there. So there's like loads and loads of like different factors, and it's why I think China genuinely maybe only has like maybe like 2 or 3 realistic attempts at winning worlds like left in them. Unless something massively like changes, then they'll like enter like they'll be like Europe 2.5 in terms of like as in like slightly better than Europe, but like China's just trailblazing ahead like so much. Because I also watched LDL before they turned it off. And the last LDL I watched, I didn't see anything that inspired me. You know what I mean? Like I used to write like the best players coming out of LDL. That's how I found Knight. That's how I found like all the like loads of players. What's cut off. On your point later on, I always thought the LPL was too big. I think the LPL has been was way too big for way too long. I think the LPL should have always been 10 teams, 2 tiers with relegations, or 2 conferences just completely like separate for the geography of China. I think that could have been interesting in and of
They
itself.
used to have 2 conferences back in like 20.
No, but like 2 actual like
so.
2 actual like conferences, like not the split groups that they done with EDG.
I thought they did East and West Conference for a while.
Yeah, they did, but like it was you still went in. Sorry, you still went into the same like playoffs and stuff like that, and like the scene format. Where I actually think just having LPL 1, LPL 2, and China just having split like stuff like that, and it being administered by like 2 different like groupings could have been interesting in its own right. Again, a very different version of China. You've also got to remember the third party tournament system in China only died in like 2018. So compared to everyone else. You know what I mean? They still tried to elongate it. So I think for a long time, China had too many teams, and it caused a dilution of like talent.
Yeah.
And it just made, as someone who loves the LPL, you know what I mean, watching like Up versus, what was the old NIP roster called before they were NIP again, Rich? What were they called again that Rookie played on? But the one that was V5. Yeah, like Up versus V5 was criminal. Like I watched those games and I was like, some of those games were absolutely like tragic. So let's not like beat around the bush here.
Hey. I have to say there were occasionally very good games from them. I remember Hacker's Herald Escape, and that shit was like my favorite play of last year.
Yeah, that was later. That was a much later iteration of it. I'm talking about 015 V5.
Oh yeah, So I have to say there was there's one game which 2023, I want to say it was summer, because it was a clip that the LoL Esports socials accounts tweeted out. I want to say it was Ultra Prime. They had Xing as their mid laner. I can't remember. It might have been Ultra Prime versus TT before they started to pop off again. 2 low tier teams, and it was the only game in LoL Esports history in which 2 players on the same team got a pentakill. So it was like 2 different people got a pentakill on the same team. And the clip of the casting was basically like, guys, what the hell, get the game over with. Because it was genuinely, even with that, like just such a poor game that we're like, you could have ended this game 10 minutes ago. why are we still doing the song and dance? So occasionally you did have those kind of games where like you had to actually be a bit mask off and cast and be like, folks, I'm not going to lie to you, this is actually just disrespectful.
But I think there's two things like worth saying. I mean, one is I think Kira's explanation will answer a lot of people's questions that they have every year, which is like, why doesn't Rookie just go back to LCK, especially if the money's going down or whatever? It's like, well, for him, maybe the money goes down a bit, but because of how the stats work or whatever, like he can still be a very well-paid player in China. So that's one part of it. The other part, which I think is kind of this interesting dichotomy that I guess is somewhat infused as well with sort of this more Eastern culture, which is there's this ever-present sort of frustration and like desperation almost to sort of be ultra competitive with Korea and actually have a chance to win Worlds, or more important than that, actually win Worlds. Like having a chance to win Worlds doesn't really mean much to them at all. So with these salaries that are now like coming down by big chunks each year, you're thinking, okay, but you're just harming your ability to win Worlds each year that you don't win Worlds, and then you're creating the system where you can't actually put like the 5 best players from China on the same team because of these arbitrary rules. So it's this weird like self-fulfilling prophecy almost with their own rule set that's actually kind of gatekeeping themselves from winning Worlds. Because if you could just put all the best players from China on a super team, it's like, okay, well, they do have the talent to compete with the best Korean teams. They absolutely do, like across the league. It's just their own rule set is kind of cucking them a bit, which I think is, weird. Let's put it that way. Yeah, sorry, go on, Keire.
No, just 2 final points, 'cause I think they're really important. I'm super excited for BLG because I think Viper, Bin, Knight might be the best tri-threat we've ever seen. It's up there with like Chove, Ruler, Keen.
Yeah.
In terms of like how aggressive, like that's like the control the backline. Where this is like Tora, fucking like let's go, boys. Like
depends which bin
get
you get, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the sad part. And you've kind of got to just hope that Ben has a resurgence.
Shin fixes the vibes of the team.
Yeah, Jun, because like the whole thing was, well, the reason Jun was exiled from BLG is supposedly, reportedly, rumor, Jun tried to steal Ben to go to IG. Is why he was exiled from BLG. But
so I thought it was Weibo that was the center of this too, because Weibo's manager was, and because basically midway through this year, I want to say Weibo's community manager was basically like, look, it was my fault, basically. Now I doubt we'll ever find out the actual details of it, but that manager was like, yeah, it was me that did it. So he's the one that's taken public blame for it. That might also be kind of like the casus belli for them to be like, well, we'll get Shin back, because obviously the public record shows that actually wasn't his fault. So perhaps that's what's fixed things between.
Not much of an exile if he comes back like 6 months later. Really,
well, no, sure, but it's very different if it's like, oh, okay, well, actually, it's arguable that actually was Shin's fault. Yeah. If it's in the public record, if the court accepts that that it's not Shin's fault, then obviously that's very, very different.
So I'm super excited for that. For that backline. Would you call it, and potentially for them to play together? I think that team, if it does like come together, has a chance of like winning Worlds and maybe doing something quite like special. And then I had another point, but I've now forgot it. So
by the way, I don't know how much insight you had on this, because I thought at the time of recording, I didn't know that Tabe had already agreed to join another team. Why wouldn't Tabe just go to BLG? Was that just not
Great question. Great question.
Oh no, that's the thing. I was like, okay, like. From the best of my knowledge, BLG is just a vibes like fucking run like org, and the reason that Jun is literally like back is because even though the org doesn't want him, right? The players love him, like the players like adore him, like Owen, Ben, Knight, the actual players, and so like to keep the players happy, keep. Again, hypotheticals. Keep Knight around. You know what I mean? Keep Ben around. You go get Jun, who might not actually be your first choice for whatever reasons, potentially. Right, okay? The other thing is the coaching staff, I'm pretty sure, this is my theory, like tinfoil hat theory, just let the players do whatever the fuck they want. And the players don't want Tabe coming in because Tabe will tell them what to do. And because they beat Tabe's team and they ended up winning the LPL, they still think they're better. Like, I think the BLG players don't. I think some of the BLG players don't see the need in Tabe. And I think they don't like how strict he is. And I think they are enjoying the celebrity laissez-faire like lifestyle that they have, where they don't need to be as like try hard, etc. as like the Tab A teams do. That is like my like theory on it.
It's definitely a good way to pretty much guarantee you won't win Worlds, I guess, you know? So it's an interesting approach.
Tab A has his like downsides as like a coach. So
We might get some better drafting, though. That's all I'm saying, you know?
Yeah, Big Way has his own downsides as a coach.
But yeah, before we depart, guys, I guess, because as I said, we're going to do a dedicated sort of LEC show. Will we do an LCK one? Who knows at this point? Maybe, possibly, who can say? But
what is the LCK, Rich?
I don't even know. Irrelevant region. But do you guys have any other big stories from the grapevine that you've remembered? Because I haven't.
Did we talk about Levi retiring?
Very briefly.
We did, might have done it. Yeah. Well, Levi retiring after a 10-year career, being greatest Vietnamese player ever. Obviously, that's a fantastic career from him. Very sad to see him go.
Sad when they go young like that.
Oh, jeez, he's 28. It's like, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think Levi's been fantastic. People will remember his level 6 at 5 minutes versus Fnatic at 2017 Worlds. I remember him for his AP jungle onslaught in 2020 and 21, where he couldn't go international because of COVID and how it affected Vietnam. Guy's an absolute icon. Going to be very sad to see him go.
Yep. Obviously, Peanut also retired.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I assume fully retired at this point. By the way, something we
H. Lee made a statement about it that he's going to military service. Yeah.
Something that we didn't touch on, but I would be completely remiss if I didn't at least touch on this, because my boy Ryu is Gen G's new head coach.
Oh yeah,
Gen G
have changed the whole coaching staff. Yeah, I did see that.
Wait, Ryu's going to be the head coach of Gen G?
Yeah.
Ryu San-wook is the head coach of Gen G. So
I have a very funny Ryu story. You probably have more because you know he was on your org for a bit. But I have a very funny story.
No, Nymaera, I have more. Me and Ryu with that.
This is way before I got into esports as a job. This is when I was just traveling about as a fan. I think second live league event I ever went to after 2015 World Quarters was I went to 2016 EU LCS semis and finals, which are over in Krakow in Poland.
Yeah.
And I ran into H2K in the airport on the way back from that. And because I only had like little bits of esports gear at that point, and I was wearing my SKT shirt, and Odo Amne goes like, "Hey Ryu," he just like stares above, was like, "Hey, look at this." This is obviously like 2 years after he did had his, Ryu dies and dies again every second with the Ryu versus Faker thing. So that's the one and only time I've ever met Ryu, and it was basically his teammates shitting on him for someone wearing SKT gear around him.
It's so crazy how there was like a zenith point where that was like used like all the time, and now like that, like people don't even know like that reference now. Like that reference is actually like gotten so old. Like, people don't even know who Ryu... by the way, this year, I've actually gotten so solemn because I realised, like, League of Legends has hit, like, the middle to late stage of, like, the Brood War hit. Where, like, Flash was at his zenith, but, like, the game was great, but you could see all the problems of sustaining the level we were at. It wasn't possible. I think League of Legends looks the same. And it's actually just sad, like all the stuff that's like being forgotten, like all like the legends. You know what I mean? It really triggered with me. I said this on the show with Rich. It was like then Peanut went to his military service, and it's like holy fuck, like all these Korean players can't play forever. You know what I mean? There is something on the horizon that does cause the setting sun. Like Faker might fucking play forever, but you know what I mean? And like, Ryu. People don't even know who Ryu is. You know what I mean? Like
people probably don't even. I would imagine that the vast majority of people now, although to be fair, one of League's problems is that it can't create new fans. So like a lot of them have been around for a long time. But I would guess that most League fans don't even know that blind pick used to be a thing. Like if you told them that, their heads would fucking explode. Like what do you mean Zed was playing against it?
Funnily enough, that came back very briefly in 2020 for the mid-season cup, which was effectively, this was height of COVID, the first wave of it, and MSI was cancelled. So they held an online tournament just between Korea and China due to proximity as the MSI replacement. Funnily enough,
who won that one? Who won that one?
So people forget about this. People forget about this. But yeah, Top Esports and Knight won their first international tournament from MSC. A huge asterisk or whatever. But given how like crazy,
I don't see any asterisk. That's all I'm gonna say. Oh, but Rich, all I'm gonna say here, but before I let the finish, when you couldn't ban Knight, okay? some fucked up shit was going on, mate. Like that's all I'm gonna say. When everyone was allowed to just play whatever they wanted, it was pretty funny.
In game one of those series, they brought back blind pick, and that was kind of wild. I mean, the problem with blind pick is that it used to be the case where you couldn't pick runes going into a matchup, so sometimes you just be completely fucked and you just had an unplayable matchup because you were playing, like, I don't know, Kassadin to Zed or something. You just couldn't play it back in the day. But yeah, it did come back very briefly in 2020.
But it's funny how, like, so many of the old memes have just actually completely died because of the vast majority of people who would even know what they were have, like, just moved on with their lives, essentially. Like, what's it, the 4K Elo Shockwave or whatever? I doubt anyone has a clue what that's referencing.
Oh, Ferelnior, Lord, yeah, damn.
Like, I think the only one that I think has, like, sustained, like, or that people just chuck out all the time, and I think half the people don't even really know, like, properly what it references is, what are you, like, fucking Season 3 Faker? Like, people who never even watch Season 3 will just throw that out because that's become, like, so hallowed that one gets used. But yeah, I think it is kind of crazy that Ryu has come so full circle that he will now be the head coach. By the way, this is mental. He's going to be the head coach of T1's, like, biggest rival in LCK next year.
Guys,
when Faker's still
T1's
playing on the team.
Yeah,
That's
guys,
mental.
T1's going to win Worlds again because whenever Faker plays against someone who's his current rival and the coach he's also played against, he wins. That's like the ultimate, like, hallmark, by the way. The only person who beat this the only person who beat this because he was also Faker's rival, but he has a winning record, was Mata. Mata was the only guy. He's the actual Mata.
Right,
That was
didn't it work out for Damwon21 with Coma as their head coach as well? Because he brought them in. World
but he was.
Semis?
But Coma was never, like, Thingy's rival. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
but
wasn't
Showmaker was, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, as in, like, KT, BDDZ's rival, and then the person drafting was Score.
Right.
You know what I mean? Fucking Score was drafted against him. And it was like, what was the other one? It was like, he's playing against BLG and it's night, and who's drafting? Easyhoon. It's like, what's going on? It's like, stop, pump the brakes. Stop this, man. It's unbelievable.
But it is kind of mental, though, that, like, imagine if you went back to 2013 when that play happened and you asked, like, you know, by the way, Ryu, in, like, fucking 12 years' time, that little bastard who's just, like, smurfed all over your face is still going to be playing and still, like, on the back of, like, a 3-peat World Championship win, and you're going to be coaching. Like, that's crazy. But, yeah, anyway, that is going to be it for this week, guys. As I said, obviously all the rosters aren't done in any region. I don't think any region's finished their off-season. We will be doing a dedicated LEC show. Hopefully, we'll be doing a dedicated LCK show, but we'll see. Maybe we'll do, actually, like, once all the LPL and LCK rosters are done, maybe we'll just do an Eastern show. That's probably the most efficient way.
It'll be too big of a show to do everything in one, I think, like, to do it justice. So, I mean, LEC will likely do everything because this is an LEC-centric show, right? We'll likely do that. I suppose we'll do rest of the world show kind of like we did today.
Oh, we're not. Oh, hey, we're not gonna do it, mate. We're not doing fucking who even play Snake Esports, whoever the fuck still plays in LPL, mate. That's not happening. I'm just saying, you know, we'll cover the teams that might have, you know, some kind of relevance.
No,
the big hit.
Can I just say we'll cover the teams that interest Rich.
Exactly. That is actually the correct answer. Yes, correct. That is.
I'll translate. I will translate for you, Nymaera.
This is what things have fallen to ever since he stopped scheduling fucking complaints truck. And again, it wasn't because we didn't want to do it. It's just because he never said, "Oh, we're going to do complaints truck this week," so we never did it.
Who can say, like, all, you know, Israel's in my ear. I just don't have the you know, control of my content direction anymore. It is what it is.
To be fair, it was actually because we got not a subpoena, it's a copyright strike. You know what I mean? Because complaints truck T1 wanted the monopoly over the truck strike.
Exactly.
They wanted the monopoly.
Yeah.
What do you mean? They did.
Yeah, true. I had to talk Faker down off the ledge. It was a brutal one. Because, by the way, in case people don't know, how people always say that, you know, Faker's secretly the coach of the team as well. You're probably thinking, how does that clown Joe Marsh ever get in charge of an org? It's actually Faker as well, by the way. Faker's not only the greatest player of all time and still the best player in the world now. Yeah, he's also the best coach in the world. He's the best in-game leader. He's the best early carry top laner. Yeah, he's also doing all the brand deals. He's just running. He's the guy who actually drives the trucks for the fans as well. Just if he's in the area, you know, but like, don't worry, mate, I'll take those car keys. And, you know, he's doing everything. So anyway, yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you next time.